Hello, everybody. This is Devin Francis, aka Leonard Meltzner.
And the one sitting beside him.
And you're watching the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast, entering into its second year of running with episode 40.
Yep.
Very exciting. And what better to start the year off with a huge celebration of another review. Because we're just repetitive trash, and that's what we do.
That hurt my feelings.
Yay. What are we reviewing today, Victoria?
Like a Good Neighbor, the new OAC episode, and the one that was voted by you. If you voted. If you didn't vote, what the heck?
Yeah.
Castles and Cauldrons, part 1.
Yes.
We're not doing part 2, we're only doing part 1.
Yes, we'll never do this. We'll do Blackguard's Revenge Part 2 next month. Just so that we can please all of everyone who submitted things.
Yeah.
Alright. So...
we're just overachievers.
Yes, we give too much.
Yeah.
'Tis our curse. The first episode we will be reviewing today is episode 745, Like a Good Neighbor. I'm going to have to take the U out of here and spell it the ugly American way. Ugh, every time I wrote this out on things where I was actually typing the title, I just cringed every time. I just look at it. It looks so wrong.
See, I don't know how to spell anything. So.
I
don't know
how
if I'm
people write
spelling
like
it
that.
wrong or not.
Written by the wonderful Nathan Hubler. Victoria, would you like to do your...
So, in this episode, Emily not Jones, Parker.
Emily Parker?
Wait, what?
What's her name, Victoria? Starts with
Olivia
an O. Yeah!
Parker.
Woo!
In this episode, Olivia Parker goes around and tries to be a good neighbor to everyone on her street and the surrounding area in Odyssey. Meanwhile, there are a bunch of robberies taking place around Odyssey, and it's a pretty disappointing conclusion, in my opinion. And I also didn't understand. It has something to do with them stealing pipes for copper to pawn it. I don't know, it didn't make any sense. Along the way, Olivia makes friends with her neighbors and is a good neighbor to her neighbors who are Whole House, Eugene, Jay's uncle, Wally Hegler, that's his name, and that's it. Yeah, those are, oh yeah, no, there's also a side plot about Wooten and everyone's favorite Roz sounding like person, Mrs. Kramer. And, yeah.
That was even more meandering than the ones that you read in advance.
Wow. Oh. Wait, what? I don't know what that means.
Meandering? It meanders.
That's not very nice, Stefan.
Well, it's a statement of fact. And another statement of fact is that they reused the opening bit for the episode.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Actually, I was kind of wondering, I'm like, I think I've heard this before, I'm like, but I'm probably just wrong, so I kind of brushed it to the side.
I was hoping that we'd get a new one every single month, a little opening thingy, but I guess that is a little bit much to ask, to have a new one every single month. So, it's kind of understandable. I was really worried in the first 30 seconds that they were going to have the parrot catch the thieves because it remembered what they said and stuff. And I was like, please don't let
I
that
don't
happen.
even understand the thing that was going on with the parrot. Like, that scene ended, I'm like, well, that was pointless. And, oh yeah, also another one of the neighbors was, what's his name?
Novacom Saga.
The guy who Chris does an insulting impersonation of.
Sure.
To quote you.
Yes.
Red Hollard.
I was so worried that they were going to have the parrot solve the crime in the end. I am so thankful that they didn't.
That'd be like another Parker Jones mystery.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was fearing. I did like the way that they transitioned into the theme, though. I can't appreciate John Campbell enough for the wonderful work that he does. And Wooten opened the theme. Which
yeah,
they
gave him a new opening theme, and I really liked that.
Which I do believe that is the first time Wooten has ever opened the show before.
No, they used to have an old one for him. I'm pretty
yes.
sure they did.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did. But that's the first time in a long time that they've actually like used one of those, much less come up with a new one.
Yeah, so either way, that's really cool, especially, you know, considering Guy Feldstein got one, seems pretty warranted. So
if Guy Feldstein gets one, anyone can get one.
Yeah.
The parrot should get one if Guy Feldstein gets one.
I like the idea of being more connected with the people around us in life, but I was really worried with Red's speech there at the beginning that this was going to be a really technophobic episode. Like, you need to be more connected because cell phones and computers are evil and they're making you less social and blah blah. What's that?
Yeah.
What's that T-shirt? Electricity is magic and evil, and Thomas Edison was a witch or whatever.
What?
Like, I was really worried that that's where this episode was going to go. Focus on, like, that, and it didn't, and I'm really happy. I would not have been a happy camper otherwise, and I would have gone into a rant about the irrationality of technophobia, but it didn't, and so I will spare you thusly, and everyone will be happier. Mrs. Kramer!
Yeah, as soon as I heard her say, like, rah, rah, I like heard her voice, and I'm like, oh, Devin's gonna be happy.
I'm so happy. Also, nods to anger mismanagement and to mend or repair.
Yeah, they're like bringing up all the old scenes of like her and Wooten. I'm like, hey!
Yeah.
And like the club poetry
Yeah.
stuff. And she's like getting like really upset about her poetry stuff. I'm like, I thought you didn't care about your poetry stuff.
Yes.
Like, she sounded like she kind of cared about it more than just getting a raise or whatever, in my opinion. I don't know. What do you think?
And then,
I want to talk about this one.
next we had Detective Full House!
Like, I heard his voice and, like, my heart stopped, and I'm just like, this is the best day ever.
It really is slightly old, but really not an actually pretty recent home week.
It made me so happy. Like, I'm listening and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're back. I didn't know if you'd be in any more episodes.
Yes.
I mean, like, he was in the Penny ones.
He's only been in one episode since the Green Room Conspiracy.
Yeah.
That was a penny saved.
He was in the Penny one. But now he's in this one.
Yes.
I don't care if lots of this stuff in this episode didn't really seem like it reached a very good conclusion, because they had so many characters in it, and it made me really happy.
This is also the second time that Adventures in Odyssey has pointed out the distinction between robbery and burglary.
I was thinking of Chain Reaction. Like, the thugs just really reminded me of, like, the dictionary guy and the other
So, as
guy.
Vittori said, the first time was the burglars in Chain Reaction said it just prior to burglarizing Bernard's house. Mayberry reference! So many caps locks.
I didn't really pick up on that.
These are really...
I do things while I listen to these episodes.
Packed in... Very bad.
What?
These are really packed in here this week. The last and only explicit Mayberry reference in this show was in Album 21, and the last Mayberry reference in general was the episode titled Pokenberry Falls
Wasn't
RFD.
Al on that show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was Dan Griffith's show.
Oh, that's just the town they lived in.
Mayberry was the town, and Mayberry RFD was the spin-off of the Andy Griffith show. Wally Hagler!
Oh my gosh!
I wonder how many recent but not super recent characters they can shove into a 10-minute span of episode. Apparently, quite a lot.
But they didn't have Jay in this episode, and that makes me sad.
Yes, but he should be appearing soon because the September episode is named after him. So
that gives me something to look forward to. Hopefully it has Riley in it.
Yes, we can only hope, and hopefully he'll be in Album 58.
And he hasn't been in any OAC episodes yet, so that makes me sad.
True. I guess I might as well point out, since I seem to be doing that in all of these points, talking about continuity things, the last Star Wars reference on this show, as I recall, was Alex Jefferson's Star Wars underwear in Missionary Impossible. Another example of a...
I don't want to know why you remember that so specifically.
Why wouldn't I remember everything on the show?
I don't know, I just find it kind of creepy.
Another example of a Star Wars reference on the show is the Luke, I am your father, Darth Vader impression in Chores No More at the beginning.
Chores No More. We have to review that one sometime. That is a special little something.
Wally seems way more like the greasy salesman stereotype than normal here.
I actually didn't mind him that much in this episode.
I wasn't saying it was bad, but it doesn't feel like him.
No, I'm saying, like,
That's not his personality.
It definitely felt more,
He's
like...
way more personable than, that slick like his brother.
Well, I mean, like, he kind of has to be like that in order to have a business
Well,
like
I know,
this.
but he never has been before.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
my point.
It's just, like, that's because every single time we've seen him so far, even if he was at work, it was mostly just him interacting with, like, Jay or something like that, or, like, ex-con men or whatever. So he would act differently and stuff. So this is him at work, and he thought that Olivia was there to do business, so it makes sense that he would act like that. Also, he was a little bit like that when he was trying to offer Whit some great sales in a Thanks-Taking story.
Yeah.
So
either way,
I'm defending
he
him.
reminded me of the fancy named what's-his-face Methuselah Indigo Antique salesman from Isaac the Pure.
Yeah, I can see that.
Eugene! Long time no see. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. They're breaking into Eugene and Katrina's house.
Yeah, do you think the answering machine got them?
That's what I was saying. I was like, if they don't still have those motion-sensing microphones installed from when Dalton broke in the top floor, I'm going to be rather cross.
Cross?
Yes. And the cross is what I am. Because they didn't make any mention. I suppose you could justify that after Leonard left, they took the microphones out.
I wouldn't take the microphones out.
But
that's because I'm super paranoid about everything.
You know why? Because those microphones still had the slightest inkling of a connection to Hand Up. That's why they're gone.
Hand up!
Ow!
I'm sorry.
An angry dog barking as two male thieves break in during the stormy night. Could this be Sherman?
Hopefully he doesn't go near them. I'm pretty sure
Sherman!
that dog has rabies.
It's been so long since we've seen you on the show.
Remember that last time?
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. I wonder if this is still the same street Wooten lives on that Bart lives on.
Honestly, it's so confusing. I can't even
Yeah,
figure
and it's
out
also
anything.
where the Strasburgs live, too. And it's also where the Washingtons live. And the
yeah,
Harpers and the Waltons.
Would the Strasburgs still live there? I mean, I know they didn't move away, but...
Theoretically, they should. But they've been banned from Wits End. They're too old now. It's like Narnia.
Yeah.
Only Jimmy. Jimmy is the anti-Susan, and he can come forever. After the Popsicle Kid, I'd hate to see what would happen to Wooten's yard if Bart and Mrs. Kramer formed a neighborhood association together against Wooten's yard decorations.
I can't even... That would be terrible.
Speaking of Mrs. Kramer...
What does that say?
Beulah! We finally found out her first name. Very exciting. I noticed the AIOO
I didn't know that was a name. Now I do.
You didn't know that was a name?
I'm not sure. I don't think I did.
Yes, you did.
AIOO
Wiki hasn't even been updated with it yet, but hopefully it will. Exciting things. You know, if Eugene had had a talking water heater, it probably would have scared the thieves off, and that would have worked out a lot better for him. Back to abnormal.
Oh, I thought you were talking about album 13. I'm thinking like that wasn't
No,
Eugene.
I mean back to abnormal. All Eugene's talking appliances. That totally would have scared the thieves away.
They said bad words, so they were dealt with by Dr. Dobson. He took them to the special room where he gives counseling.
Imagine that. Just think, if they broke into Eugene's basement and they're like arguing with each other, and the water heater was like, "The pipes are loosened. Please fix this and that," and they would have. Yeah, they were dumb, so they probably would have been very scared.
Devin, that would connect things to Hand Up. And you know what happens.
That's true, you're right.
That connect things to Hand Up.
Amity between Wally and Don Pullhouse. Yes.
When they saw each other, and I'm just like, I just stopped, and I'm like, wait, what? And I just paused, and I'm like, memories flashing back, and I'm like, I'm like, this is it. This is the moment.
There were bad guys dumping evidence in Wally's lap, and Wally was helping Pullhouse solve the mystery. It was just like old times.
And I'm just like sitting there, and I'm like, they're becoming friends.
Yeah.
And well, as much as Pullhouse can have friends. What was up with him at the beginning? He's like, don't trust anyone.
Apparently it was a joke.
And then Olivia was just like, okay, I won't trust anyone. And then she got all upset. And then later he's like, you believe me? Ha ha ha. And Olivia's just like, I don't understand what's going on. And I'm like, I'm not following any of this, but Full House is back, so I don't really care. So, yeah.
Anything else to say on specific points of the episode?
I don't understand the ending.
What don't you get? Copper's
Something
really
about copper.
expensive, so they were stealing stuff to get the copper from it and pawn it off because it's really valuable.
That's like the dumbest stuff ever.
Why? They were obviously making a lot of money because, like they said, no one pursues copper thieves.
If it's so expensive, why not pursue them?
Because most people don't do it because most people don't realize how lucrative it can be, I guess.
Well, I guess I'm one of those people because I still don't get it. Anyway, we should talk about Wooten and Miss Kramer a little bit more. I thought the ending was a little touching with them. Like, I was surprised when Wooten was all like, no, and stuff, and he's like, I won't let you. He's like, I'm gonna do this against your wishes. And it sounded a little bit like he wanted to annoy her. I mean, like, I know as Wooten he wouldn't want to, but it was like I don't know, I just found it a little bit surprising. Do you know what I mean?
I didn't really think about it. I mean, when he decided to move it, I was like, oh, you know, that was really good of him. Because even though he was doing the right thing already, now he's doing the right thing by the kids and by Mrs. Kramer.
Yeah,
but
when
I didn't
he's like,
think anything
I'll move it. Didn't she say she like was allergic to something?
No.
That,
Full House is allergic to chocolate, but she
No, that's Wally.
Oh, yeah. But,
I thought she said that... No, I thought she said...
She just didn't want it there because she doesn't like the sound of children laughing and stuff like that.
Wow.
Exactly. So I didn't think there was anything off about wanting to keep it there because kids will come and they will warm Mrs. Kramer's icy heart. Just
she
like it was.
Have one of those.
It's weird because, you know, in Whatchamajiggy, Mistaken for Good, you know, she was pretty nice.
Yeah, but I don't know.
I don't know. Overall,
maybe just like seeing a delinquent. I use in brackets because I still love Jay and I'll never insult him or anything. Like Jay, just like restoring her faith in humanity or whatever, just warmed the
cockles of your heart.
Her icy black heart.
Yeah.
So.
Overall, I think it was pretty decent for a slice of life episode. The moral was well handled. The story had 2+ threads, 2.5 threads. A little bit of mystery, but for me, it was the character cameos which pushed it into above average territory. Still not a great episode per se, but it was above average.
I wouldn't say it's a great episode, but definitely the thing I enjoyed most was just like seeing all the characters again, because I really loved all the characters that made returning cameos in this.
Yeah, other than that, it was just pretty mediocre slice of life, regular. It wasn't bad, but it was just, you know, any old episode.
Wasn't amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't stand out at all in any way other than that. To go over the other stuff on the OAC site, we had the video starting with Bob Smithhauser, and he actually gave an explanation of Brock leaving and that transition and stuff, and I'm really glad that they went over that instead of just kind of brushing it off like nothing had changed. When Dave and Nathan walked up to him, I really hoped that they were going to treat him like an intern and stuff. It's had all this work because he was new in that department. It'd be funny because he's actually been at Focus for years. They're bringing a pie instead, so I was disappointed.
Aww.
But then they dumped a whole bunch of mail on him and bird-sitting a parakeet ominously named Rodney Rathbone.
What?
So I was very happy. And then there's that line, who names their parakeet Rodney Rathbone? Oh, don't worry. You'll figure out why in a few days.
I don't understand.
Well, maybe you should have watched the video, Victoria. That line cracked me up. I thought it was really cool hearing someone talk about the importance of being a neighbor to our physical neighbors, because in the last year at UBC I've heard 2 different amazing speakers talk about the incredible strides God had made in their communities through their work with their literal neighbors. And one of them was Shane Claiborne from Philadelphia, and he'd started this community in his neighborhood in the inner city, sharing the resources and gardening together, restoring a neighborhood filled with gang violence and broken down buildings, and it was incredible. They lived in an area that was so poverty stricken. There was at least one shell of an old factory in their neighborhood. Most of the women there had lost their sons to gang violence, and so they just banded together and created this incredible community. They even took the guns that were used to kill their sons, and they literally beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, and they smelted down the weapons to make gardening tools, to make vegetables and flowers, and they took AK-47s and made them into shovels by rebuilding them, and they look really cool, to be honest. And it was just a place full of death and poverty and destruction, and they turned it into this small community of sharing everything together in love. Like, it's like this little monastery in the middle of the inner city in Philadelphia, and it was so cool. And what better witness could there be? I'll put a link to their organization, The Simple Way, down in the description in case anyone wants to look at it. The black and white good neighbor tips were pretty funny. That cracked me up. Those were well done. And then they had a story from that same pastor a couple adventures ago. More tips, and then there was a video tutorial on making Wadfam chalk sods, and I think that the kids who are doing it are the OAC ambassadors who were elected from something a while back. I can't remember what the contest was. I think that putting soda water in the blender for 30 seconds would take all the fizz out of it, but I guess not. I've never had a Wadfam chalk sod. I certainly hope to one day when I get to go to the real Wits End. Also,
Take me with you.
Also, the Webquest had a crossword puzzle that was just for this episode that was like all sorts of really tiny details and minutia from it, which is,
Was one of the answers
cool.
Copper?
Yes, it was.
So good.
Yes. It was like, the clue
Hand
was like...
up and high five.
Was Cosmic Drake / what the thieves were stealing. I was like, ha. Yeah. And it was actually pretty cool, considering there were 2 questions that I didn't remember from listening to the episode once. So, ooh, yeah. Let's see if you remember, Victoria. One was, what was the last name of the thieves?
Steve.
No. And the other was, what time did Olivia visit Detective Full House?
3 a.m.
No. See? Difficult. This episode also featured no specific charity, although there is a little blurb this time, possibly in response to some comments about last time, I might guess. Anyways, so this is what it said in the area where the charity would be. We love teaming up with Christian ministries to turn their heartwarming stories into Odyssey Adventure Club episodes. It's exciting to see God's people making a difference in countries all over the world. Of course, we also feature exclusive club episodes that aren't inspired by a specific charity or relief effort. This happens to be one of those months. So, enjoy Like a Good Neighbor and stay tuned for more adventures based on true stories of faith and Christian service. So, I guess that Drake the Cosmic Copper was not necessarily an irregularity in that it didn't have a charity for it, nor was it a mistake or result of a late change in the genre of AIOO.
I still think they should have done Bart's Space Camp as the charity.
You are correct
in that.
He would
gladly take their money.
However, but he wanted to do it for free.
Of course he did.
However, that seems that, and that does make sense, right? They can't pair a charity with every single episode that they do, lest the episodes seem really weirdly balanced towards, missions and stuff, like having so many episodes take place in Africa and stuff all of a sudden. Yep. So, thoughts for the episode, Victoria?
I guess I'll rate first today.
Yeah.
So I really liked seeing all the characters band together and be super awesome together and stuff. And it really made me wish that my basement was flooded, because
not again.
You're just upset it was your fault that it flooded.
You want that to happen again?
No. But if it did, then Eugene and Pull House and Wally and Olivia and them would be there to help, and Red and the parrot, but no one cares about the parrot. The parrot was the worst thing in this episode. I didn't like the intro. of this episode. Not like the OAC intros that Kevin and Garrett make. Like, just the parrot thing. Like, yeah. And the copper thing was weird.
There's nothing weird about it.
It's
makes
weird.
Absolutely perfect sense. You know, there are old buildings that have roofs made of copper that people would steal the roofs off the building to sell them and smelt them down.
Wow.
That's also why
you'd have to be pretty oblivious for someone to steal the roof right over your head.
Yes. Victoria...
It sounds like it'd be the opening to a joke.
Victoria, they're not stealing the entire ceiling off the building, nor are these houses that they're taking them off of. They're old institutional buildings and things like that. Like the Chateau Frontenac has a roof that's made of solid copper. It's just like the tiles on top of the roof are made of copper. That's why the roof is green.
Anyway, I think I'll give
Copper
this
turns green when it
episode,
oxidizes.
because aside from those flaws, also I was upset that Katrina wasn't in the episode, because when
That's true.
when Olivia went to Eugene's house, I'm like, oh, Katrina, and there was no Katrina. I'm like, is it too much to ask for all these characters and her too? And the episode ended without her, so I'm like, I guess so. So it did have all the characters. I really loved Full House. I think he was my favorite thing about this episode, just seeing him again.
Copper is also the reason why pennies are actually worth more than 1 cent, and why some people smelt down pennies for their materials, because pennies are actually worth like almost a nickel or something like that because of the copper that they have in them.
Shh, it's okay. So I will give this a solid 3 out of 5 pennies.
3 cents.
3 cents out of a dime. Wait, out of a nickel.
Yes.
Nickel.
And as for as I said, it's a pretty average episode. It was pushed up a little bit merely by all of the cameos that it packed in there.
Yeah, I'd probably give it 2.5 or 2 or something like that if it wasn't for all the characters.
It would have been nice if there were some cameos for characters pre-hiatus, but even still, you know, having Mrs. Kramer and Red and Wally and Dawn all packed together like that is really cool regardless.
What if like Bernard lived on Olivia's street and then you just heard like a knock and then you just heard like Maud at the door and she's just like, he can't come to the door right now.
He's never coming to the door again.
And then Olivia's like, okay, bye. And then it's just like, oh, why? Oh, my life is so sad. Carry on.
The theme of being a neighbor in that has been explored before, obviously, but not in that same type of way. So having a unique theme is always good because there are episodes that reuse the same theme over, which can be good, but it can also be repetitive. So that's good. There's a little bit of a mystery, but overall,
it was a very good mystery, in my opinion.
It's just because you don't understand the concept of
I
stealing
don't.
copper. What is difficult to
There
comprehend?
have never been so many brownies in an Odyssey episode before.
That's a fun
Something
fact
to
for us.
point
Thank
out.
you, Victoria.
You're welcome.
Did you count the brownies Olivia had?
I did, in fact. There were more than 12.
And you know this how?
Because she said she had, like, so many brownies she had to go on to different streets.
Yeah, but that's because
Yeah.
nobody took her brownies.
That's because she's giving brownies to strangers. They probably thought they were poisoned or drugged or something. Like, literally, brownies.
Or something else.
Can you, like, think of anything worse? It's like walking up to a kid and being like,
That's
I want to
true.
be nice today. It's like,
There was
hello,
literally-
small child, would you like some candy?
There isn't a more suspicious food that you could give to strangers than brownies.
I mean,
So-
like, everyone probably knows Olivia. Well, lots of people. So, but still, it's like
Yeah, I know.
the worst possible
So-
thing.
Yeah, my rating is 3.7. It was a little bit above average, but not very much. Fairly forgettable episode overall.
So,
And so, next we're doing Castles and Cauldrons, part 1, and so I'll find the cheesiest iMovie transition I possibly can. Go! Well, I hope that transition was appropriately cringeworthy for you all.
like, MS. Comic Sans. MS.
I thought you meant MS as in, like, the
What?
autoimmune disorder.
No. Like, I was trying to think of the name of the
I was
font,
like,
but I couldn't.
Victoria! Yeah.
I don't
It's
know what
Comic
you're
Con.
talking
Comic
about.
Con, yeah. Alright, next we're doing what, Victoria?
Castles and Cauldrons, Part 1. Only Part 1.
Episode number
122. And I
Written
totally know
by-
that off the top of my head. Paul McCusker, because I'm so amazing.
Alright, because it's relevant, might as well read the bit from the guide straight off the bat here. Behind the scenes. This episode was carefully reviewed by Dr. Dobson and the entire team throughout the production process because of the supernatural nature of the subject matter. It is the only episode, thus far, with a personal caution from Dr. Dobson. End quote. Except I said thus far instead of so far because I can't help speaking fancy.
I love Dr. Dobson so much. Like, he's my bro. But after I hear the intro a certain amount of times to this episode, it's about, like, what, 3 minutes long?
I don't know.
Like, I think it starts around, like, minute 4 or something like that. So, also, when I was little, it always put me in a really creepy mood. Like, this episode...
It's a creepy episode.
Yeah, I know, this episode, but, like, even the warning would just creep me out way more. So, plus it goes on for a really long time, so I usually just skip the intro to, like,
Skip
where
the
episode...
parental warning.
Yes, I usually just...
That's like skipping the FBI warning on a VHS tape.
Rebel! So,
At least you could do that on VHS tapes.
No, you can do it on DVDs, too.
Not
Just
usually.
press the fast forward button.
Not always.
Usually works. Anyway, this episode, I have listened to it at night multiple times, but I usually don't because this episode still terrifies me. Like, yeah, this episode is not one I like to listen to.
I've never
at
been
night.
scared of this episode. Apparently a lot of people are, though.
Are you kidding?
I should also
this
mention
episode
that...
is this, in my opinion, this is the scariest episode in all of Odyssey.
No, the mysterious stranger and
Mysterious
Steven's
Stranger
tortured brain
is
damaged howling
a
in the
close-
night as the building collapses
No.
on Wit and Lucy.
The Mysterious Stranger is in my top 5 scariest episodes, definitely.
And the Black Veil when Wit turns into Hitler.
Yeah, definitely some Novacom stuff, and we'll get there eventually with Novacom. Eventually, one day.
Eventually, one far off day. So, this
Anyway.
episode was chosen by you, our viewers. Thank
Yeah.
you for voting on an episode which I both like and that is an interesting discussion topic.
I like this episode. This is Dave Griffin's favorite episode. The voice of Jimmy Barkley, for those of you that don't know.
Hey, Dave. He's a
Hey,
super cool guy.
Dave. We love you,
He's
Dave.
He's a good friend. When I think about the theme of this episode, I cringe a little internally, perhaps more than a little. And don't get me wrong, I do think that this is an important theme to discuss, and the occult shouldn't be taken lightly. And this episode does handle things somewhat well, but it is an episode which is very, very often, most often, taken the wrong way. Absolutely. Throughout this episode, especially in Dr. Dobson's intro, I wrote this before listening to the episode again without keeping in mind, and it's really not as well done as I remember it. Not really all that much in Dr. Dobson's intro, unfortunately. It is somewhat explicit in this episode that what happened to Len, supernaturally speaking, is not the norm with these games. There's normally nothing wrong with RPGs, they are just games. There are cases of RPGs leading to involvement with occult activities, but that is the exception, not the rule. Focus played things on the safe side here by using these episodes to inform kids of the situation, but these episodes are supposed to make it clear that you're not going to become possessed by playing D&D one time. It should be clear that 99% of players are never going to have any sort of spiritual experience as a result of playing these games. The problem here comes in with the fact that there are a lot of hyper-conservative Christians who believe that all RPGs are of the devil himself and that you are going to go straight to hell for looking at one of them. This is, of course, utterly ridiculous, but it does not stop them. Without the careful examination that we here at the Oddcast strive to provide for you, it can be easy for those sorts of folks to use these episodes to back up their ideas. There are a couple very famous tracts from the 80s showing comics of people becoming possessed and trying to kill people with curses because they play Dungeons and Dragons with their friends.
Sounds a little bit like Reefer Madness.
It's like you remember the trailer. We talked about it with Garrett too. That was based on those tracks. And that's what those same people try and use these episodes to back up their ideas. It's terrifying. It's
not as bad as Reefer Madness was.
The problem is it's equally easy for sensible people to look at these episodes superficially and think that they're saying the exact same thing as the people saying they are. And that's why I'm glad that we are reviewing these episodes. About a year back, I ran into a forum on Reddit about these very episodes specifically, and I've only gone on Reddit a couple of times before. Tumblr's really more my thing, but I stumbled upon this thread from an external source, and people were discussing Castles and Cauldrons and Focus's intolerant view on RPGs. And the commenters were basically all angry atheists who had bad memories of these episodes from their Christian upbringings, coupled with the memories of their parents banning them from RPGs because of these episodes, and their feelings were understandable even if they weren't fully justified. I took it upon myself to dive into the fray and explain that these episodes were trying to say something slightly different and dissociating them from the idea that all RPGs will fill you with the spirit of Satan. And most of the people were pretty reasonable and well-receiving of my explanations. Some of us even had a little moment shared over how cool wit is, because who can't get on board with that? As James once said, wit is basically Batman without spandex. So, on to the actual episode.
But first, there's the thing with our cousin when he first heard it. This episode, and then he went home.
Oh, yes, that's true.
I thought that
Same
might be interesting.
James, our cousin-in-law and youth pastor, when he was a young lad and heard this episode when it first came out. It's interesting, he listened to it on the radio and directly after went over to his friend's house, and his friend asked him to play a fantasy RPG with him directly afterwards, and he decided not to because he took it as a sign, considering he had literally just come from hearing this episode air the first time. Whether or not it was a sign or not, I will leave that for God to say, but I certainly think it's a very interesting story. Take it how you will. Also, it should be noted on the subject of that this episode doesn't do that good of a job of reminding people explicitly that this is not every case, but it is a possibility. I do think that Wit has a line or two in the second part which makes this clearer, but, you know, we're not there yet. So I guess we'll see, if I'm remembering correctly, next month in August once we get there. August.
I don't think this episode's so bad, like, as you're kind of making it
No, I really do like this episode.
Like, I like this episode a lot.
In the past, I always, thinking about it, I always thought it handled it really well in that terms. Maxwell?
VA's name?
Oh, Nathan Carlson.
Yeah, I really, really love him. I think it's kind of interesting.
He's Len, isn't he?
Yeah, he's Len.
Yeah.
You'd never noticed that?
Well, I'm sure that I knew that before. I just didn't think about it. You know, he plays so many characters. I don't, you know.
Every single time, I just like pick up his voice. I don't know.
If you asked me, I would have listened and be like, oh, it's Nathan Carlson.
Every single time I pick up his voice, I just get so excited. I'm like, it's like Richard, but it's not. I do that about so many characters and different things. I just get excited when I hear voice actors I know doing different parts if I really like their characters.
All right.
It's like the characters on another adventure.
So, on to the episode itself, and as you can see my disillusionment with that aspect of the episode as we go through. However, there are still things in the episode that are done exceptionally well, and I don't want to discount those, but I think that this is an important thing to point out. So, listening to Dr. Dobson's intro at the very beginning, I still wish that he'd made it a little more explicit that this is a cautionary tale and not a necessary cause-to-effect scenario. But I guess, however, this program was meant to be listened to as a family unit, and questions are meant to be directed to the parents and guardians about it, so I would only pray that they would have the sense to recognize this, and that having parents set individual boundaries based on personal knowledge of each person is what Focus was going for. So yeah, let's go with that. I always find it weird how Chris's intros are equally cheery and vague, whether we're having a nice slice of life episode or a life-threatening or creepy episode, like you can see here, or with Waylaid in the Windy City. because even no matter how creepy the episode is going to be or how serious, Chris still has like the same like kind of
Hi,
vague.
this is Chris.
I'm being serious right now.
Welcome to Adventures in Odyssey.
You want mellow? I can give you mellow.
Oh, we love you, Chris.
You're the best. Best.
You cannot talk. Can I just interject?
Please.
For a moment? First time, how old do you think we would have been first time we heard this episode? I probably would have been about 8. That's my guess.
I was going to guess I was 8, but no, I'd be older than that.
Yeah, you would have been older than that.
That seems like a fair guess.
I was probably about 8 or 7. You would have been like 9 or 10. So I remember putting the CD in for this one. It had, what was it? A is for Attitude, Castles and Cauldrons, and not Quality of Mercy. That's the original.
Oh, it's An Act of Mercy.
Yeah, it's An Act of Mercy, and then it had Castles and Cauldrons Part 1 and 2, and then the last track was A is for Attitude.
Yes, it was a 4 episode.
Yeah, special
disc.
4-episode disc.
Oh, wait a minute. We were wrong, weren't we, when we were talking about how On Thin Ice was the last one to have.
Yeah.
So. Oops. Subtract that. Oops. We'll go back and erase that from your memories.
Yeah.
You're getting sleepy.
So Devin always listened to episodes one night before I did. Didn't you?
Yes, because after I moved into a different room, when we got the episodes, I would listen to the disc one night because we only had one disc, and then the next night I would listen to the next disc, and Victoria would get the first one. It was horrible
because I always had to wait one night, so Devin always got to hear the episodes before I did.
Well, I paid for them all, or they were all my birthday presents and Christmas presents.
Fortunately, we don't do that anymore since iTunes and stuff, so we can both listen to them the same day.
Yes.
In fact, now I usually listen to them before he does. But anyway.
Well, now we listen to him on the radio, so...
Yeah. So anyway,
or on the OAC,
since Devin listened to Dungeons & Dragons...
Castles and Cauldrons.
That's what I said. Bless you. Times 2. So Devin listened to it before I did. Nice brother he is. He's like, yeah, you might not want to listen to this at night. So then I'm like, okay. So then I listened to An Act of Mercy. And then, like, Castles and Cauldrons started. I heard, like, the parental warning. I can remember this very clearly. I heard the parental warning. I don't think you've ever
told me about this.
And I think I have once when I was, like, 12 or something like that.
I'm not going to remember that.
We were raking leaves in the backyard.
All right.
We were on the back thing. Anyway, so, I hear the parental warning and Chris talking. I'm like, oh, snap. I better go to... the next one, and then I'm thinking, so it's 4, so I can actually listen to another one tonight before I fall asleep. So then I remember skipping again, but I totally forgot it was a 2-parter. So then the second part starts playing, and then I'm like, oh, and I hear after like 5 seconds of hearing Chris talk about, like, she mentioned something about, like, magic in a game and, like, Jimmy and his cousin Len, and then I'm like, oh man, this sounds like a good episode. And I'll dive into more of what I thought a second later. So I skipped to A's for Attitude, listen to that. Anyway,
oh, I thought you were saying you kept going with that because you thought it was a separate one.
No, I remembered it was a 2-parter, so I just skipped past it.
I see.
Anyway, so what I thought happened in that episode, just from like the beginning of Part 2 description, just Chris saying like, last time on Adventures in Odyssey, Len was going to teach Jimmy some dangerous magic. Let's see what happens. And then it just jumps into it. So I thought it was Jimmy and Len, who I'd never met because he's only in this 2-parter. He's kind of a one-shot character. I thought that they somehow went into the imagination station and it was programmed for a game. It was kind of like Gloobers, but it was before I ever listened to Gloobers. I thought they somehow got sucked into a board game and they had to like learn magic or something like that to get out. I'm like oh, that
Jumanji.
Sounds like, yeah, like Jumanji. Like, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Except
for Jumanji scared me as a kid, so I was thinking, like, this actually sounds like a really good episode. I don't understand why Devin doesn't want me to listen to it.
It was like
next day I listened to Castles and Cauldrons.
I'm like, and nobody died.
And I'm just listening to Castles and Cauldrons. I'm like, this is the scariest thing I've ever heard. I think the scariest thing about it is it's very, what's it called?
Climax.
Not climax. it's just like environment. Like
Climatic
it's
graphic.
very atmospheric. For those of you who have played the game Amnesia: The Dark Descent,
Oh,
you'll
I see what you
understand
mean.
perfectly.
Especially in the
like,
second part, I guess.
Yeah.
And then that camping. I get it.
So like
Or Silent Hill, I guess.
Amnesia is the perfect game in the sense that it creates.
Not that
like,
Victoria's recommending
fear.
that you go play it.
No, I'm not recommending that you play it unless you have a high tolerance for blood and being terrified and stuff like that. Like, I'm pretty sure it took about 10 years off my life. Anyway, so it uses sound effects and music and stuff to create the perfect scary environment. And I think that Castles and Cauldrons probably does this better than any other Odyssey episode for just creating like the creepy
factor
environment. Just like the screams and howls and stuff, and it just like gives me goosebumps every single time I hear it. Like, if that wasn't the music, I would be able to listen to this two-parter at night without like any problems. The biggest
So you're
thing
saying is that John Campbell's amazing?
Yes, the biggest thing that scares me about the two-parter is just like the music. It's like so disturbing. That is my rant.
Interesting. I'm pretty sure that most RPGs do not involve this much LARPing in them. Especially because I thought this was supposed to be
Well, you've never RPG'd or anything.
True. But I thought that, I mean, this is supposed to be parodying D&D, right? And I'm pretty sure that's played on a table with dice.
It is.
And lots of pretzels and soda. I fear to think that people listen to these episodes that thought that, they thought that all RPGers did this.
RPGers usually do dress up in costumes
Well,
and give each other names and stuff.
Well,
so.
I know, but
I'm not saying that they go into the forest and do stuff like that.
Hit the trees with plastic swords.
Yeah, it seems more like a cross between like if Digger Digwillow decided to like
take up RPGs.
And it's like you have to imagine things in the forest. You need to build a treehouse.
Probably he would have been much more dangerous than Linwood.
Yeah.
That's why Wit had to kill him. Coming to the scenes with Wit. Segue. Perfect segue. Coming to the scenes with Wit, this is where I have to give the most merit to these episodes, and I think that in the,
I don't even know where that came from!
Well, I remember I saw someone say somewhere once that the reason Digger Digwell never appeared again is because Wit killed him to steal his imaginative power and youth, to maintain his youth. Because that behind-the-scenes thing that I read talked about how the episodes were carefully reviewed because of the supernatural nature. And so what I take from that, it was probably less of them carefully reviewing it to make sure what I was talking about earlier, of making sure that it was clear coming across that, you can still let your kids play some RPGs because they're not all, straight from the pit of hell. But it was more this part that I think they were more intensive of, and this is where like I said, I have to give the most credit to these episodes by far. And I mentioned this in our interview with Garrett, I believe. I'm not sure if it was cut or not. But the attention to detail and maturity with which the team handled Wit's reaction to the spiritual disturbances in this episode is incredible. As I mentioned previously, I've had a number of friends who have had very serious demonic encounters. It kind of comes along with the territory when you live where we do. And a lot of the people in our youth group have had statistically a lot higher than the normal number of experiences like that. I was talking to one of my friends once, another youth leader, on a trip as we were driving back about an encounter she had when she was young with some very dangerous demonic forces, and she was struggling to find the words to describe what it felt like. And I tentatively offered Wit's words from this episode, just quoting when he talks about being in a hot kitchen and that stuff there. And my friend said that was exactly the perfect description of what happens. I put the words into her mouth that she was looking for. And that's where my greatest appreciation from these episodes comes from, because that kind of intensely mature detail on something is such a controversial and severely, spiritual, like maturely spiritual topic is commendable to the highest order. And it would have been so easy for them for what is ostensibly a kid's show, for them to write something off like that in such an easy fashion, but they didn't. And that is incredible.
Can you imagine VeggieTales trying to tackle something like demonic stuff?
That's exactly my point. I also have a feeling that Len went off the deep end long before he got involved with CNC.
Yeah.
If George's line, "Look at those marks, only Claus could have done that," doesn't creep you out to the highest degree, I don't know what would.
Just, like, especially listening to it for a second time, and you hear that line, I think it just, like, sticks out.
And there's, like, a little twinge of sound effects there in the background. It's like...
all the sound effects in this episode, like... I'm so... Like, this room, if I had to listen to Castles and Cauldrons in this room at night with all the lights off, I would just be, like, crying the whole time.
It's like
the scariest thing.
It's like what Caleb
ever.
was telling us
This
the other day.
room in the dark terrifies
about
me so
this.
much.
What Caleb was saying the other day at the lake about how when he watched The Empty Child for the first time, he was on a trampoline in the middle of the night, just outside in the darkness, which is probably the most terrifying setting in which you could possibly watch such an episode of Doctor Who. And this would be the exact same sort of thing. Not as bad, but, you know, still pretty bad. I've always assumed, based on George's line here, and then Len's line later, about how cats can be persuaded to do anything, that controlling animals or controlling cats is the power that Len was reticent to tell Jimmy about.
Yeah, I wondered if that... I was waiting to ask you about that one. I've always wanted to ask you about that line, but you know how you always forget to...
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something I've always wondered about. Is that, like, Len's thing or whatever?
I don't know. I would assume so.
I wondered that.
This is a part where I feel the episode might be a little exaggerative. Again, not with the spiritual representation necessarily, but just with the severity of it in relation to playing fantasy role-playing games. And that's basically where the first part ends. You'll have to wait, obviously, until August to hear the second part. What do you think's going to happen next time, Victoria?
I think that Len is going to change his demonic ways and become a monk.
Yes. Either that, or he will have a hideous transformation and try to take over the high school by turning everyone into zombies.
You never know. I don't know about you, but I think this whole episode just, like, terrifies me a lot.
No, that's not me.
But, no, I mean, like, in my opinion, it's the scariest episode. Just, yeah. But I know it's getting into part 2, but definitely the part that scares me the most is just, like, the tent scene. Like, I remember, like, pretty much hyperventilating first time I listened to that scene, and then just, like, when the
to keep moving so we don't drop frames again.
When the tent opened and
Wit comes in.
And, like, I thought it was...
Ooga booga! You should have come up doing the Goatman impression.
No, that would not. I remember,
I'll never understand how Lucy and Jill made their voices so low playing the Goatman. They kind of messed up on that part, the sound design.
Yeah. Well, that was like...
If they
guys doing that.
Well, exactly. If they didn't end the Goatman part with them going rah and like their baritone voices, it wouldn't be so bad.
But just, like, I remember when Wit opens and he's like, what's going on here? I remember screaming at, like, the top of my lungs first time I heard that. Like, yeah. I cannot listen to this one at night. I can't, say that enough.
And because this is a two-parter, we do not give our final thoughts this time.
I don't even know what I'm going to rate this one, honestly.
But we don't have to, because we have a whole month before we have to do that. Because we're caught up, and we actually don't have to do all the episodes consecutively. Woo! We're caught up, guys. It's so exciting, and this episode's going to come out on time again.
Like, honestly, what is our next episode?
Okay, so...
Is it the...
That's what we've gone to. It is the end of our episode. Very subtle.
Thank you. It sounds... I could be talking about Tron, N-E-N...
Yeah.
Com.
Next time, we are going to be doing...
Next time on The Adventures Not as...
Next time, we are going to be doing another top 10 countdown.
Oh, I was right.
This time, well, you're the one who picked it.
Yeah, but I wasn't sure if it was for this week.
We are going to be doing the top 10 most intense scenes in the Novacom Saga.
Which is very interesting that that's being sandwiched between what is considered the scariest Adventures in Odyssey episode.
By you. Actually,
No,
I think
not just by
that's
me.
true. I think
It
the
is
fans,
actually,
the fans did vote it to be the scariest, if I recall correctly.
Like, even James says it's...
Yes, because he's definitely heard every episode. I do believe that fans on the TOO did vote it to be the scariest episode, I think.
Everyone I know is scared of this episode, except for you, apparently.
Yeah, I'm too...
I think it's interesting that The Mysterious Stranger scares you more than this episode.
It's not the whole episode, it's just that one scene
Yeah,
that's
I know,
creepy.
but, like, if you hadn't pointed out the creepiness of that scene after you first listened to it, I would not be scared of The Mysterious Stranger.
Ha ha ha, that's my fault.
Yeah, it actually is.
So, yeah, that's what we're doing next time. Admittedly, it would probably be more logical to start with an episode that was like our top 10 favorite scenes in all of Odyssey. But no, this is actually the list of scenes that I've made long before the Oddcast was a twinkle in our eyes. I can't remember how long, actually.
You probably made it a couple of years ago.
I could just move my mouse over the sticky note. It'll tell me when I made it. January 9th, 2013.
I was right.
At 2:16 a.m.
Nice.
Pacific Daylight Time. Pacific Standard Time. Pacific Daylight Time. It was a Monday, apparently.
Wow,
this is the one time when I haven't... Oh, sorry, Friday. Oh, wait, no, that it was created on a Wednesday.
This is so
modified
riveting.
last time on Friday. Yeah, this is the one time that those little things popping up has not annoyed me to all get out. But that's what we're doing next time. So I'm not sure how much we'll be able to comment on it, as opposed to just be showing you the scenes that we've selected in a certain order. But
well, you've selected.
Yeah, but you'll help me narrow the list down.
Yeah.
I have more than 10 selected there. So.
Oh. Well, I want to talk about the scenes, so...
Yeah, so, that's it for this episode. Congratulations to Miss Emily White on winning.
Hand up to you,
Yeah.
or two.
Manu Sarsum, Manu Sarsum. Congratulations to Emily White on winning a 1-month subscription to the Odyssey Adventure Club from our sweepstakes last time. We gave out 2, and no one has claimed the second one. Apparently, it could be because lots of people still think you can only get it in the States. The way it works is it streams anywhere in the world. The only problem with location is they will only ship things to the States. So like the Clubhouse magazine for that month that you get with it, I believe, that will only ship to a United States address.
Everything else you get.
Yeah, all the online
stuff. And by everything
stuff,
else we mean the
including
episodes.
the mobile app and on the website, you can still access from anywhere in the world. And we will even let you can use this 1-month subscription whenever you want. So if you want to save it to December so you get the whole year's worth of episodes instead of only getting up to July, sure, we're just sending you $15 basically, and you can do with it whatever you want, technically speaking. So to win it, just like last time on Facebook or on the comments here, just write $318.99 and it's yours. You get $15 in the mail. I mean, I don't know what there is to lose on a deal like that in Canadian money. So yeah, I don't know why I can complain.
Canadian money.
Especially since right now it's actually $5 for the month. So you actually get $10 extra out of the deal. So comment and take our money. And until next time, I think that's everything. Thank you for joining us on our side of the YouTube. I've been Devin Francis.
And I've been Victoria.
And I already said the other bit. So, goodbye.
Bye.